الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين ما بعد. Inshallah ta'ala, we're going to start tonight the book Akhsar Mukhtasarat. And before we get started, it's some terms that we got to know in order to understand the book. Firstly, there's some things, some say vocabulary we got to know, we have to understand and know what we're talking about before we dive into the book itself. So, firstly, this book itself is in the subject or the science of Al-Fiqh. Al-Fiqh. Do we all know what Al-Fiqh is? Number one. Does anybody know what Fiqh is? Rulings. Like issues. So somebody asks you what's fiqh, and you tell them rulings. But they understand what that means? You with me? Scholarly opinion. Like scholarly opinion. So it's no dalil, it's just opinion.
Scholarly opinion based on dalil.
And scholarly opinion based on dalil. That's another issue, but inshallah we're going to touch that today. Scholarly opinion based on dalil, that's going to come back up. The word opinion is difficult. It's not well accepted opinion. Opposed to kitab or sunnah, opposed to dalil. Right? Fiqh generally means al-fahm, to understand something. To have an understanding of something is to have fiqh of it in the Arabic language. But the science that we know of, just like the other Islamic sciences, like hadith has a science in itself. Scholar hadith, Lugha Arabiya, the language of Arabic, is a whole science and things that go with it. Tafsir, it's a science in itself. And then there's subcategories under that. Al-Fiqh is the same. It's a science in itself, it's a whole science. So that science doesn't carry the same general meaning as the meaning in the Arabic language, just to understand. Understand what? Something specific that needs to be understood. And as the ulama explained it, define it, and there's a lot of different definitions. We don't want to get too technical because sometimes the scholars debate on the definition. Is that definition accurate or not? But generally, they'll define it as ma'rifatul ahkam al-shar'iyya min adillatiha al-tafsiliyya. Ma'rifatul ahkam. Having knowledge of the rulings, Islamic rulings, taken from dalil, based on dalil. Knowledge of the ruling based on dalil. Now, knowledge of the ruling, when we say a ruling is a hukum on something. And there's a hukum, there's a ruling attached to everything we do, right? Everything has a ruling on it, based on all of our actions have rulings connected to them. Whether we know it or we don't know it, there are rulings connected to our actions. So, knowledge of those rulings based on the dalil is fiqh. Okay? Now a person might say, what is a ruling? Right? Everybody doesn't understand the same thing, or a person might understand one thing. It's possible somebody can understand something from the word ruling, and then somebody else understands something else. So that's a general definition, right? But it's accepted, and many people use it, many of the scholars use it. After that, inside of that definition is the next term that we got to know. which is hukum. The word hukum, and the plural of that is ahkam. Hukum, and the plural is ahkam, which is translated as a ruling, because these things are going to come up. So the question is, mathalan, somebody says, or the question is going to come, what's the hukum, for example, what's the hukum on wiping the head in wudu? Okay. That's the question, for example. So when you hear hukum, what's the ruling on wiping the head in wudu? Islamically, what's the ruling connected to wiping the head in wudu? Or what's the ruling on washing in wudu? When you wash your feet 3 times, what's the ruling on washing the feet 3 times in wudu? Hukum. Ha, kaf, mim. Ha, kaf, mim. And the plural is ahkam. Ahkam. So the question might come, what is the ruling on washing the feet 3 times in wudu? Right? Meaning, what's the hukum on it? Tayyib. Now, that question could be answered with 5 different possible answers. Tayyib. 5 possible answers that could be connected to that answer. Clear? Those 5 answers are the rulings connected to the af'al al-mukallifin, the actions that we do. Every action that we do has a ruling on it. Okay? Whether we know what the ruling is or we don't know the ruling, right? There's a ruling connected to every action that we do. Tayyib. So when the question is asked, what is the ruling on wiping the head in wudu? Then the answer could be one of 5 things. Tayyib, one of 5 things. You know? Huh? One of 5 things. Tayyib. Either, and we'll do them the opposite so it's easier to memorize. But we got to understand what it means, what each one means. When I say understand what it means, not the translation of the word to Arabic. Tayyib, I mean to English. When you translate a word, it doesn't mean that's what the word means in totality. Okay? As we're going to see, inshallah ta'ala. Tayyib. So, if we say, what's the ruling on wiping the head in wudu? Tayyib. Then we say it could be one of 5 things. It could be wajib. It could be obligatory. Right? Or it could be, what's the opposite of obligatory? Haram. Right? Or it could be recommended or sunnah. Or it could be the opposite, makruh, disliked. Or it could be what's called mubah, which is not, there's nothing connected. If you do it, you do it. If you don't do it, nothing's connected to it. Tayyib. Now, those are the translations, but we got to understand, if we say something is wajib, what does it mean? It means obligatory, right? We translate as obligatory. Like if something is obligatory Islamically, what does that mean for the Muslim? You're sinful if you don't do it. And you're deserving of Allah's punishment for not doing it. Clear? Everything, as we're going to read the definition, because we got to know these ahkam. The whole book is based on ahkam. That's what fiqh is, ma'rif al-ahkam. Fiqh, the science of fiqh is connected to knowing, knowledge of the rulings connected to the things that we do. So these terms are going to come up over and over and over and over and over. And when you learn these terms, it gives you a better idea and a better way of looking at different actions and the ruling on those actions, the hukum on those actions. So the first one we start off with al-wujub, the hukum al-wujub, and the action is wajib. Tayyib. Now, according to the definition, هو ما طلب الشارع من المكلف فعله على وجه الإلزام. Allah gives orders in the Quran. And the Prophet ﷺ gives orders in the Sunnah. They give commands. The command from Allah generally, the origin, the asl of a command, but if Allah tells us to do something, commands us to do something, then whatever He commanded us to do is obligatory. And if we don't do it, that we're sinful or we're deserving of Allah's punishment for not doing it. Like every command from Allah, from the Messenger Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, is not necessarily on the level of being an obligation. Some commands are not of that level, they're on a lower level, which is, it's a command, but it's recommended. Okay? So the first two, al-wujub, something that is wajib, obligatory, it reaches the level that if a person doesn't do it, it's obligatory, to the fact that if a person doesn't do it, they're sinful. طيب. The second level, or the opposite of that, let's do the opposite of obligatory, which is haram, al-hurma. So, the opposite of an obligation, that if you don't do the obligation, you're sinful. The opposite is something that's haram. So the first one, Allah commanded us to do something, is talab al-fi'l. He's commanded us to do an action. And something that's haram, Allah is commanding us not to do an action. So if you do the action, if we do the action, then we're sinful and deserving of Allah's punishment. Both of them are commands. One is a command to do something, and one is a command not to do something. Both of them have reached the level that if you do that action, or if it's obligatory, if you don't do it, you're sinful. And the other one, haram, if you do it, or if you don't leave it off, you're sinful. Right? Everybody with me? Clear? That's the level of, let's say that's the highest level regarding the repercussion for doing an action or for not doing it. That a person is sinful and deserving of Allah's punishment. The next level doesn't necessarily bring that aspect of being sinful for not doing it. Or is it a punishable act if a person doesn't do it? Those two are also opposites. The first one is a nadab, something is mandub, recommended. If something is recommended and you don't do it, it's not a sin for not doing it. Right? But if something is obligatory and you don't do it, then what? It's sinful. You see the difference? Al-mandub is the third one, which is sometimes we say recommended or sunnah. Sunnah is considered to be something that is recommended. The opposite of recommended is something that is either, depending on how you translate it, hated or disliked. It can be disliked or is hated. Al-makruh, al-karah. It's disliked or is hated. So the action is called makruh. Meaning, if a person does this action, they should stay away from it. But if they do it, is it punishable by Allah Jalla wa'ala? It's not a punishable act, and it's not a sinful thing to do it, but it's better to stay away from it. Everybody clear? Or do we need examples? Let's go back. Let's go all the way back. Obligatory, something that is obligatory, we have to do like what? Salah. If a person doesn't pray, they're sinful and deserving of Allah's punishment. Allah could punish them. And Allah could forgive a person. Right? For an obligatory act that they didn't do. Something haram, like gambling. Gambling is haram. Right? Which means that a person, a Muslim that gambles, this is sinful and they deserve of Allah's punishment. Something that is recommended or sunnah. Let's not use that. Let's say the two rakats before Fajr. Or the rawatib, the prayers after Fajr. If a person gets up and prays Fajr, and they don't pray the 2 rakat before Fajr, right? It's sunnah. They're recommended, highly recommended. Prophet ﷺ said the 2 rakat before Fajr, are better than this world and everything in it. So they're recommended to pray, right? Mandu, mustahab, recommended. But if a person doesn't pray them, it's not sinful for not praying those 2 rak'ah. Clear? Like, something that is disliked. There are a lot of things that are disliked. For example, as they mentioned here, when you have a contract, or as he says, iqal talaq. No, I don't use that one. Let's say, as it's going to come, let's use something that's going to come in the book later on. Rolling up or letting the eyes looking towards the sky in the salah, not focusing on the ground but looking in the air during the salah. Or rolling up your sleeves while you're praying. Stuff like that. It's going to come later. Right? If a person does this, it's not sinful. Right? It's not sinful, but it's better not to do it. The better thing is not to do that. But if a person does that, it doesn't invalidate the action that they're doing. It's not going to invalidate the salat, for example, but it's better to stay away from doing that. But the last one is a mubah, something that is mubah, that is open. There's no punishment connected to it, right? There's no reward connected to it. Right? If a person does it, they can do it. Eating, right? Everybody eats and drinks. Say you want to walk to the store. Is it recommended to walk to the store, or is it obligatory to walk to the store? You can walk to the store, you can drive to the store. There's nothing necessarily connected to it. But those 5 rulings, so the question is going to come up again. What's the hukum? What's the ruling on such and such? When the question comes like that, what's the ruling, is connected to those 5. Tayyib generally is connected to those 5. We'll start there. Clear? Everybody with me? Those are called the ahkam of khamsa, the 5 Islamic rulings. Tayyib. Sometimes it's possible that the question comes, mal hukum, what is the ruling on this? What's the ruling on making the ghusl yawm al-jumu'ah, the ritual bath on yawm al-jumu'ah? It's possible that you read a book, you got a book in the house, and it says ghusl yawm al-jumu'ah is wajib, obligatory. Right? And then you got another book in the house, and it says the ghusl yawm al-jumu'ah is sunnah. And that's a big difference. Right? According to the technical definition of obligatory and sunnah, that's a big difference. Why? If it's obligatory to make a ghusl yawm al-jumu'ah and I don't, that means I'm sinful and deserving of Allah's punishment. It's a command from Allah. Right? Or from the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam. And I don't do it, that means I'm sinful. It's what it says in one book. In the book you got right here, it says it's wajib. It's written out, W-A-J-I-B. Right? And it says obligatory next to it. It might not give you what we're talking about now, the details of what wajib means, but that's what it says. Tell you, you got another book, and it says it's sunnah. Highly recommended sunnah. Which means what? If you don't do it, it's not punishable. Right? It's not a sinful thing, it's not punishable. See the difference? In an issue like this, the thing is, how does that happen? How does it happen that you come up with 2 rulings like that there's a difference in those, right? It's a big difference in the result, in the repercussion of a question like that. Somebody answers the question and says it's obligatory, and another scholar answers the question and says that it's recommended. This goes back to, a lot of times it goes back to the understanding of the text, right? If there's one. If there's 10 people in the room, and we all read one hadith, it's possible to come up with more than one understanding, right? All issues are not like this. Meaning, it's not like people just read through the Quran and everybody understands what they want to understand. That's not the case. But there's some issues where this is the case. And in those issues where that's the case, and we're not going to go too far into this, but there's room for different. It means the person of the high level of knowledge, the mujtahid, not the scholar in general, the mujtahid, which is a high level of scholarship. It's not everybody's not able to extract, look at the hadith and pull out rulings, right? So in this case, there's room for these people, these scholars to differ, right? But this is where the issue of what you mentioned earlier, the scholar with the little. And this is where the issue of math-habs come in, math-habs. Just a general question. Math-habs good or bad? Bad. Bad. It's like blind following.
But then, where you from? Like, in different countries, don't they have different methods? They follow a certain scholar.
Right. Yeah, they follow different methods. Mm-hmm.
Is it good or bad?
Is it good or bad? But that's the question. Number one, what is a madhab? That's the question. We got to make sure we understand what a madhab is before we can say it's good or bad.
I don't want to say like the following of a scholar, if that's what it is, but it's like I can't really explain it, right?
The following of a scholar.
But it's
Is it bad? Is it bad to follow scholars?
To what extent?
To what extent?
blind following.
Blind following a scholar? Is it bad to blind follow a scholar? Like, the methodology, that's going to come up too. That's going to come up. Like the method, as is defined earlier, described it. ما قال به مجتهد بدليل ومات عليه. What the mujtahid, what the scholar says from ahkam, meaning, like previously, one scholar says the ghusl on Jumu'ah is sunnah. That's what he says, and he has dalil. And that's what he died believing. Based on what? Dalil. The other scholar says it's obligatory. Based on what? Dalil. And he died believing it. That becomes his madhab. Now, the madhab that we know now, the most famous, the madhab of Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, Imam Malik rahimahullah, Imam Shafi rahimahullah, and Imam Ahmad rahimahullah. These are people of the Sunnah. Other than Imam Ahmad, Imam Malik, you have a hukm with no dalil? Alright? Nah. Right? There's a misunderstanding of what a madhab is. The difference between the four, in general, is when we say bi dalil, what that scholar says based on dalil, the next question is, what is dalil? If we say, for example, somebody says, the ghusl yawm al-jumu'ah is obligatory. What's our question? What's the dalil for that? When we say what's the dalil, what's the evidence for that? What are we looking for? What are we expecting? Proof. From where? Hadith or Quran? Or ijma', scholarly consensus? Or who? Ish? I can't hear you. Qawl al-Sahabi. Tayyib. Or yes. Or we got a bunch of ors. Right? What most people know and what those four imams agree on is Quran, Sunnah, Ijma', scholarly consensus, and qiyas, which is, they translate it as analytical deduction. But let's just say, for example, Allah said in the Quran that liquor is haram, right? Later. Allah didn't mention anything about perks, right? Or weed, right? So we're going to say weed is permissible, right? Or any other drug that comes out new. So what do the ulama do? They take liquor and the reasoning contained in liquor that makes it haram, and they look at something else. Is that same reasoning here? If it is, they get the same ruling. Yes, that's a super, super concise summarize of what yes. It has conditions and all of that with it. All of this is jurisprudence. All of it. All of it is what they translate to mean jurisprudence. طيب. So the issue now becomes dalil. What dalil does this imam use? Because out of four, and there's more than four pieces of dalil, these are the ones that they all agree on. But what if it goes beyond those? Then they differ. Some of them accept this as dalil, and some of them don't. Clear? Everybody with me? Nobody differs when it comes to what's the dalil, ayat from the Quran, authentic hadith from the Prophet ﷺ, ijma', consensus of the scholars, and qiyas. But after that, it's a lot of the other forms of dalil that are used and that they recognize, right? But all of them don't see that to be dalil. So therefore, for example, Imam Malik rahimahullah, he uses as dalil a'mal al-Medina, the actions of the people of Medina. He was close to the time of the Prophet ﷺ. So all of the people in Medina were doing this action, and nobody said anything about it. Is it possible that people are practicing bid'ah that close to the time of the Prophet ﷺ? Widespread scholars, not regular people. We're not talking about regular people. We're talking about ulama. Scholars in Medina. Nobody says anything about it. So Imam Malik uses that. The people of Medina, as they call A'mal of Medina, he uses that as a proof for something that is from the Sunnah to do, or put a hukum on it, one of those 5 rulings on it. Imam Shafi or Imam Ahmed rahimahullah, they don't accept that as a dalil. Therefore, Imam Malik might use that and say, okay, this is Sunnah. What's the dalil? The actions of the people of Medina. Imam Ahmed says, look at the same issue and says, what's the dalil? Right? He says it's not from the Sunnah. Why? There is no dalil. What do you mean there's no dalil? The actions of Medina, people of Medina. No, Imam Ahmed doesn't accept that as dalil. He doesn't have to. Clear? So all of the imams from Imam Abu Hanifa, because people talk about Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah as if he's a person who wasn't a person of dalil. You have to know Imam Abu Hanifa's story and his life to understand why he did what he did. They all base it on dalil. So Imam Abu Hanifa, he has, let's say, a process that he goes through. An issue comes up. What's the ruling on praying in the masjid for men? Let's say for example. If we say the ruling is one of those 5, right? He goes, Quran. Is there anything in the Quran that says in the masjid? What if he doesn't find it? Goes to what? Sunnah. What if he doesn't find it? What? Is it ijma'? It might be ijma'. What if there's no ijma'? Qiyas. What if there's no qiyas? What's after that? There are things after that. Right? Okay. Imam Malik, rahimahullah, which is the imam, he came after Imam Abu Hanifa time-wise. First it was Imam Abu Hanifa, then it was Imam Malik. Imam Malik doesn't necessarily take those same steps after number 4. Or they might not be in the same order. Right? Do they have dalil? They have dalil. They have dalil. Do you know all of the dalil? Because we don't know dalil, don't mean there's no dalil. Clear? Like this book, the book that we're studying, and they wrote books like the ulama write books like this intentionally. The beginner level books are not filled with a bunch of dalil. The beginner student, it's almost like this. If a new shahada comes in here right now, if a person takes shahada right now, right, and we got to pray Isha. They just took shahada, and it's time to pray Isha. That means they have to do what? They got to make wudu. Do they know how to make wudu? Do they know the dalil for wudu? Huh? They don't know the dalil for wudu. They don't know nothing about Bukhari, Muslim, the ayat, wudu, and the Quran, or anything. So when you take them to show them how to make wudu, what you going to do? What you going to tell them? You going to do what? You going to say what? Yo, say this. Say bismillah. All right, do this. Do this. do this. Are you going to run to him off the chapter of wudu from Sahih Bukhari? Huh? Or you going to say what? The sunnah is to do this. And you're going to go through all of the steps. That's what this level book is. So when he doesn't mention dalil, it's not because there is no evidence for the issue. This is not the time for that. This is not the level for that. This level is what they say, taswir. So that we know the picture. What are we talking about? What is a ghusl, number one? Before we start discussing the ghusl. Right? What is the menses? What are the menses? What is the menstrual cycle? How do we know if we're talking about a menstrual cycle blood or something else is going on blood? That's what this is. This is not a book. This is not Sahih Bukhari. But because it's not Sahih Bukhari doesn't mean they're not dalils for the issues mentioned here. Clear? So I don't want nobody to think that we just reading opinions of men. What they did was Imam Ahmad rahimahullah. How many hadith did Imam Ahmad memorize? Anybody know? This is the book. This book is based on the madhab of Imam Ahmad. Which means, what steps did Imam Ahmad take in order to get to the fact that he says something is from the Sunnah?
So that book is based on the method of Imam Ahmad. Were all basically the rulings be basically his opinion? Or his, I don't want to say opinion, his hukum.
His hukum, good. It would be the ruling that he saw to be the strongest ruling. He put a rule on this based on the dalil. He looked at this verse, he looked at this ayah, and this would be extracted. Based on this dalil, based on not one verse, not one hadith, based on all the evidence gathered, Imam Ahmad believes that this is sunnah, and that's what he died on. Clear? طيب. What are his usul? How does he get to that? He goes firstly, the nas. He looks at the nas, and he doesn't go against the nas, as they say. Don't matter who went against him, he wouldn't go against the Quran and the Sunnah. If there wasn't anything mentioned, or it doesn't mean, because some things have a dalil from the Quran, the Sunnah, Ijma', and everything. It might have more than one dalil for it, right? Then after the Nas, Kitab wa Sunnah, you will go Qawla Sahaba, statement of a Sahaba, and none of the other Sahaba went against them, which is Ijma', consensus, right? And then Imam Ahmad rahimahullah, he would use, before qiyas, he would use what they call al-hadith al-mursal. Hadith al-mursal, which is, if you translate it, it says a weak hadith. Right? Imam Ahmad rahimahullah. But you gotta understand, what does weak hadith, or what does it mean when you say weak hadith to Imam Ahmad? Hadith mursal to Imam Ahmad rahimahullah is not from the weak hadith that we know. It was a lower level of authentic hadiths. Not the strongest level of authentic hadith, but from the lower level of the authentic hadith. He would use a lower level authentic hadith before he used qiyas, which is just to compare two things and then give them a rule. طيب. How many hadith did Imam Ahmad memorize? Anybody know? Salam alaikum. Right now, how many hadith? They said Imam Ahmad rahimahullah, as they say, alfin, million. He said that nobody should be given fatwa and answering questions if they didn't memorize, like, if I'm not mistaken, 200,000 hadith. That a person shouldn't be given fatwa. You want to say Imam Ahmad just giving opinions? His collection of the Musnad is a huge collection of hadith. 30 volumes of hadith that Imam Ahmad rahimahullah gathered. 30 volumes. Hundreds and thousands of hadith that he memorized. They didn't just memorize and say, this is authentic. No. They might be weak. Some of them might be weak. They memorize them anyway. We're going to come and say Imam Ahmad just coming with opinions? Or Imam Malik, rahimahullah. Imam Malik, who wrote Al-Muwatta. That book of hadith, Al-Muwatta. Right? Imam Malik, the Imam of Medina during this time. We're going to say Imam Malik just, right? Just shooting from the hip, as we say. These are people of hadith. And some of them are considered to be fuqaha al-muhaddithin. They're people who gather between the two sciences of hadith and fiqh. Right? The imams. What people do after the imams, and what general people who don't have knowledge do, is something different. You talk about people blind following. It doesn't mean that because Imam Ahmad rahimahullah memorized all those hadith, or Imam Malik or Shafi or Abu Hanifa rahimahullah. It doesn't mean that they're perfect. And it doesn't mean that every time they say something, that's it, nothing else to talk about. But what you have is respectable differing. But they're the man, respectable differing. He says it's sunnah, he says it's obligatory. They know that and they respect it. Because why? He has dalil and I have dalil. He understood the dalil one way, which he has the right to do due to his level of scholarship, and I have the right to understand it the way I'm understanding it.
So you want to answer the question of that type of good or bad?
Do it sound good or bad to you now?
It sounds like it's not bad, but it can be.
It can be. It can be. Just like anything else can be. Following the ayat in the Quran, if a person without fiqh of the ayat, right, without understanding of what that verse means, could lead a person to do something that Allah dislikes. Like the Khawarij. Right? They take verses from the Quran. You gotta understand, we talk about bid'ah and all that. When you study the books, if you get into the books of Ahlul Bid'ah, talking about real bid'ah, I'm not talking about talking about bid'ah, real stuff. You'll find that they have dalil from the Quran. They use ayat with tafsir. They use hadith from Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. Innovators. We're talking about established innovators. I'm not talking about nobody in this city. I'm talking about, we look through the books of Shaykh Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah. Right? He's going back and forth with innovators. Islamically, they're going outside of the Sunnah. And how does he deal with them? When he reads through, they say the hukum on this is Sunnah. Why? Based on this hadith. Where's the hadith? In Sahih Bukhari. Wow. But they don't have the fiqh. They don't understand the hadith. You see the difference? It's not the same. They don't understand the hadith. Right? You with me? So, it's not that one person has the lil and the other person doesn't know. The lil with the understanding of it. Give salam to Allah. A person could memorize a bunch of hadith and not necessarily understand them. It's possible. And that's why you have a difference, as the ulama differentiate between huffaz and fuqaha. Memorizers, and it's not belittling or anything. Some people, some scholars, they spent their time in certain areas. Other scholars spent their time in specific areas. In those areas, they've been given titles. So there's some people who were dedicated to checking the chain, every person in the chain. They were dedicated to making sure that they memorized the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ and that it doesn't change. That's what they dedicated themselves to. Hafal, memorizers. There's some people who went and they dedicated their time to understanding. Their memory might not have been as strong as the other ones, but their understanding of the text might be stronger. And there's some of them who gather between memorizing and understanding. Ahmed was one of those people. So it doesn't mean you have to follow a madhab, right? But for the people who do, they're not following just Imam Abu Hanifa. No, Imam Abu Hanifa says something is sunnah because he has dalil from the Quran and sunnah to say that that's sunnah. Right? You with me? In America, generally, nobody follows a madhab generally. But for real, most people who go to Saudi to study, they humble because that's what they teach there. That's on the curriculum, on the books. The madhab of Imam Ahmed is what's taught in Saudi. You go to different parts of Africa. Why a lot of people from Africa, why are they Maliki? Because in a large portion, that's what they teach there. Because that's where that madhab spread in that area. The students of Imam Malik carried his madhab, the way he would look at dalil, not the statement, Imam Malik said this, not that. It means what? The hadith reads this. How do you look at the hadith? How do you benefit that something is sunnah from the hadith? That process of how do you benefit from the hadith or from that ayat, the process of how to benefit from the ayat or the hadith is the madhab of Imam Malik. The process of how to benefit from that ayat and hadith is the madhab of Shafi. The process of how to benefit. Not just the statement Shafi said, and we just follow Shafi said. Clear? We're not just following, no, of course, these are people of the Sunnah, people, Imam Malik and Shafi, these are people of hadith. So, this is the madhab, right? These are madhab. You'll find that majority, if not, a majority of the books of fiqh are written on a madhab. It's very rare that you're going to find a book that's widespread that's not based on a madhab. Even if a person is reading it, they don't know. Right? The person might be reading it, they don't know what it is. All they know is, it says this is sunnah, this is recommended, right? طيب. Clear? Everybody clear so far? So in general, I wouldn't say a madhab is bad, it's a bad understanding. Can it be bad if a person goes overboard, just like in anything else? Yeah, of course it can be bad. A person puts a statement, because again, nobody's free from making a mistake, even though they memorized 1,000,000. No person is free from making a mistake. So we don't say because he memorized this, it's impossible he was wrong. People criticize Imam Abu Hanifa all the time, rahimahullah. But Imam Abu Hanifa, he was the first in chronological order. So it's known that a lot of the books of hadith weren't gathered during his time, right? So he didn't have a lot of the hadith that those that came after him in time had. So he used what he had to come up with rulings. Even with that, the way he taught, Imam Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah, he taught in a majlis, as they say, a majlis, other scholars are sitting there and they're sitting talking about issues. Not regular, these are big scholars of his time. So he would bring major scholars from his time and they would debate issues back and forth. Say sometimes they would be sitting debating on issues, one issue they would talk about back and forth for a month. Discussing one issue. What's the hukum on it? Based on dalil. Because this is the thing. You say, what's the dalil? The hadith says this. The hadith in Bukhari. Okay, let's look at the hadith. What in this hadith proves that that's what you're saying? You with me? It's another level. What in this hadith that we're looking at proves that that's obligatory? Based on what? Now he says what it is based on that. He argued that doesn't prove that. Why? Because of this. They said that the majalis, his sittings would have early minded, and they would debate for issues on for a month maybe, right? Now somebody comes and says, Imam Abu Hanifa, he made a mistake here. So some of them would say, how Imam Abu Hanifa made a mistake? And he got all of them scholars there, nobody else said anything. You see the picture? But nobody's perfect. The point is nobody is perfect, right? So yes, it's possible that the mujtahid, that high level of scholarship, it's possible that he makes a mistake, but the Prophet ﷺ said that for the mujtahid, it's 2 rewards, right? If he's correct, he gets 2 rewards. And if he's incorrect, he still gets 1 reward. If he's correct, he gets a reward for what? Getting the answer correct and the effort. This ain't nothing. This is not something light. This is heavy, extensive reading of Quran and Sunnah and statements of the Salaf in order to come up and say something is wajib. It takes a lot. We do it now, it's just in front of us. We say anything. Can't do that. Why? It's haram. Hey, it's haram? Haram. Yeah, you can't do that. Haram. Yes. So if a person do it, if a person does it, it's haram. That means if I do it, then I'm what? Sinful and deserving of Allah's punishment. That's you sure? I don't know about all that. Tell you. It doesn't mean that a person can't make mistakes or that they're perfect, but we gotta put and give people their proper respect and their level. That these are not other men who just, as we say, shoot from the side of the hip. Tell you. So this book is Aqsa Mukhtasara. It's very short, concise, to the point, clear. The author, rahimahullah, died about 400 years ago. Ibn Baldan, he's famous, his name is Ibn Baldan. And Ibn Baldan, as it says, he was from Syria. He was a faqih, a scholar of fiqh and hadith, and a muhaddith. Right? It says he was ahad al-a'immat al-zuhad, one of the imams of zuhud, that he abstained from the dunya. He wasn't a person of caught up and involved in the dunya. that he spent his time worshiping. كان عالما ورعا عابدا. He was a worshiper, scholar, spent his time for the ibadah, worshiping and seeking knowledge and teaching and writing. He died in the year 1083. Right now is 1440. He died in 1083 when he was 77. So he wrote a book, and he said he wrote it for a couple reasons. He wrote it this way for a couple reasons. Firstly, for the beginner. Scholars don't write books and just put everything in there at one time. Just like when you take a new shahada to make wudu, you don't pile everything on them. You say, listen, do this. Do this, do this, do this, do this, do it. We know, you know there's a hadith saying that. You know there's an ayat, according to the ayat and the law, you know that you have to do that. But you don't pile everything on a person and just walk through the door. And that's what level how the ulama write books, different levels. Our problem is sometimes we don't know what we're picking up. So we pick up a level 4 book or level 3 book and we on level 1. And then we don't understand it and we stop 6 pages in. Then we pick up another book, right? It's a level 6 book. Read 20 pages instead of going to what we, right? The minhaj of talab, the proper way of seeking knowledge and learning. So this book, and I'm saying that because once we see it's not, again, it's not that it's not dalil, it's not a book for that. Like Ibn Qudama rahimahullah, he wrote 4 books, right? The first book is for the beginner, Umdat al-Fiqh, which has very little dalil, very little. Every now and then he mentions a hadith, as he said, just for barakah, just for the blessings. I mentioned the statement of the Prophet or something, right? He wrote it for the beginner. Then he wrote another book after that, Al-Muqni'. Al-Muqni', he gave a little more detail, and he mentioned, he mentioned one statement. This is it, and that's it. The second book he wrote, he mentioned that it's possibly, some scholars say that it's sunnah, and some scholars say that it's wajib. So he mentions a little different, a little khilaf in the second book. In the third book that he wrote, Al-Kafi, he mentioned more with some dalil, with some different inside of the madhab itself. Meaning the scholars that study the madhab of Imam Ahmad, they differ. And then he wrote another book, the 4th level, where he mentions the dalil, what Imam Ahmad said, what Imam Malik said, what Imam Shafi, what all the Imams say, what's their dalil? What's the difference that they have? You see the difference? The level 4 book is not for the beginner. Person coming, that's not how you learn, that's not how you study, that's not how the ulama study, that's not how you teach. And if you read their biographies, you'll see the books that they went through in the beginning and then where they went. So this is the beginner level, it's the entry level, as you say, the entry level. Right? So he said he wrote it for the beginner, and he said he wrote it, يَسْهُلْ حِفْظُهُ عَلَى الرَّاغِبِينَ. And he wrote it short like that and direct for the person who wants to memorize it. As the Talib Ilm should memorize something from every science. Of course, after memorizing what? First thing should be memorized is, First thing Talib Ilm memorizes what? طيب. With Al-Fatiha? Yes? The Quran. Talib Ilm, first thing the student starts with the Quran. Everything in them other books is from the Quran. Everything, all the ayat you find Kitab al-Tawheed is from the Quran. You read the ayat from where? The Quran. Qira'atul Surah, ayat from the Quran. Right? After the Quran, and right now you start moving into every science. Every science has books that are like this. Short, direct, to the point, for the person who just started. And they start with memorizing. This is one of those books. It says for the people who want to memorize it. He says, even though it's small, that it has a lot of information in it as far as the major issues. So he mentioned that in his introduction. And then he says, Kitab al-Taharah. The first chapter is the chapter of purification, Kitab al-Taharah. Do we know what Taharah is, number one? It says purification, right? But it's a little more, it's almost like the 5 rulings. We say halal, haram, but what does that mean? What does it mean to us? We gotta know what it means and not just settle with the translation, right? Something is wajib. What's wajib? Obligatory. No, wajib is obligatory. That's what it's translated to mean, but it holds more of a meaning than just obligatory, right? It means that what? It's a command, and if I don't do it, I'm sinful and deserving of Allah's punishment. That's wajib, obligatory, right? At-Tahara is translated, as like it said on the flyer, purification. And it has a couple different meanings. The meaning here, in the ulama, they always give meanings in the language of Arabic and what it means legislatively, what it means Islamically. So, to purify something, of course, to stay away from filth, right? To stay away from things that are filthy, dirty, and things like that. But when we talk about Tahara in Islam, there's a specific definition. It's a specific definition. So they say At-Tahara, and 3 things are mentioned in the definition. Irtifa' al-hadith, وما في معنى الارتفاع والزوال الخبث. طيب. I don't know how much of this we're going to get done tonight, but we got to understand this before we go on. This chapter is a little, detail. There's a lot of detail in the beginning. We have with the Tahara, but after that, it opens up, inshallah. So, irtifa' al-hadith, to lift hadith. Hadith. Hadith, we gotta know what hadith is. Because when we say at-Tahara, purifying something, hadith. Hadith is a wasf, a description. Alright? It's a description that's put on a person. قام بالبدن مانع من الصلاة ونحوها. طيب. مثلا, this is hadith. If a person come in here right now for Isha, do they have to make wudu? Well, no. How do we know if the person walking in here, the man or woman walking down the street, the Muslim, how do you know if they have wudu or not? You don't know. Right? At the same time, the fact that we don't know if they have wudu, right? That doesn't mean they do or they don't. They might have to make wudu. Right? It's a hadith. It's nothing that you can see. Alright, so what's qad? If they don't have wudu, that means they have something that is blocking them from praying. The description, as we say, I'm not in wudu, we say, right? I'm not in wudu, right? Or I gotta offer wudu. Like the fact that we put that description on ourselves, we say we understand from that what? I can't pray. Until what? Until I remove that block from in front of me so that I can go pray. This is Tahara. Irtifa' al-hadith. The removal or the lifting of that blocking. Something that's blocking me from praying. Like, how do we remove that block? With wudu. All the time? When? Might have to make ghusl. So the hadith, that block could be, as we say, let's say it's a minor block or it's a major block. Tayyib? It could be a minor block. If it's a minor block, then I just what? Make wudu and then I go pray. If it's a major block, then I gotta do what? I gotta make a whole ghusl. Either way, both of them, the major block and the minor block, they're described as hadith. Hadith. Tayyib, which is a wasf. It's a description that a person, you won't be able to see. You won't be able to tell if a person came here right now and they had to make wudu or ghusl. We wouldn't be able to tell. Right? A person takes it upon himself and they go there and make wudu or whatever they need to do. So either is hadith asghar, the minor form of hadith, the minor block, or it's the major block. Which in that case we need a ghusl. Right? Tayyib. That's the first thing for hadith. Can't even pray without it. Tahara is also, as they say, ma fi ma'na irtifa. Sometimes it's considered to be Tahara. It falls under the meaning of lifting that block, even though there is no block. Huh? طيب. Say for example, right now, we pray Maghrib and it's almost time for Isha. I'm in wudu. Right? Wudu does what? What does wudu do? It lifts, it purifies, it lifts the block. I made wudu for Maghrib and I'm still in wudu. I didn't break my wudu, so therefore I already lifted the block. Sah? طيب. They call it then for Isha. I say to you, I'm going to go make wudu again. Say, you broke your wudu? No, I didn't break my wudu. So if I didn't break my wudu, I'm still in wudu, right? That means if I go make wudu, is anything going to be lifted? Nah. But I go through the action of doing it as if it's going to lift it. Right? This is also from Taharah. It's from purification, even though it doesn't lift it, because it's already lifted. Clear? Meaning, I might make a ghusl and I don't need to make a ghusl. Is a ghusl from Taharah? It's from purification. It's from Taharah. It's still from Taharah, even though I may need to do it, I may not need to do it. Clear? So it's possible I'm in wudu already, and I want what's called tajdeed, renew. I just want to renew it. Right? I just want to renew my wudu. I don't have to. I can pray like I am, but I just want to renew my wudu. That's also from Taharah. Clear? You with me? Even though I'm in wudu and it wouldn't actually lift that blockage, because there is no blockage at that point. طيب. The last part of Taharah is zawal al-khabath, the removal of something that is impure or dirty. Right? The removal of impurities or filth. Like when do we do that? Huh? When you go to the bath, istinja. Right? And make istinja, you clean yourself off with water to remove the filth. That's also from Taharah. All of that's from Taharah. In this chapter, Kitab al-Taharah, it's going to include all of that. All of that's going to be included in this chapter on the different levels. Clear? Those are the three types or the meanings that come out of the word Tahara. That it's possible you have to remove a blockage. It's possible that the blockage is removed, but we just renewing it, which is still from purification and Tahara. Or you might have to even, maybe you got to clean the ground off so you can pray there. Right?
Is Tahara only in reference to physical, like physical impurities, like clean?
No. Here, in this realm that we talking about, you said physical? Not necessarily, because the first one is not physical. La. The blockage. Oh, you mean like that? La. Sometimes the harder is used for the description of like with shirk. With shirk and tawheed. It goes into that. But again, I'm glad you brought that up. This book has nothing to do with Aqidah. This has nothing to do with Aqidah. This is not the science of Aqidah. Okay? This is not the science of Aqidah. It's not an Aqidah class. The Aqidah class was what we did last before the Eid. Aqidah to Tawheed. That was all Aqidah for the Eid. This book is based on what we spoke about. Ahkam. Something halal, haram. Is it sunnah, recommended? Is it disliked? Or is it just mubah? It's open. Alright, so this has nothing to do with Aqidah. Clear? So when we talk about the heart, we're talking about those things now. We're not talking about what a person believes. طيب? We're going to stop there because we got to pray. Any questions? If not, we'll stop there till next week, and we'll start with the first chapter, or the first chapter, Al-Miyahu Thalatha. Water, there's three types of water. Why is water important? How are we going to make wudu and purify? How are we going to make istinja? How are we going to make ghusl? How are we going to make wudu to pray? Right? So they start with water. Can we use all water? Is all water permissible to use and make wudu with? You with me? Like there's some water that we can't use. Some water that's, right, haram to use. Some water is haram. Some water is like, right? It might be a situation where that water is obligatory. Situation that boy is recommended to use it. You with me? So that's going to be the first chapter of Miyahu Thalatha. And we'll stop there until next week, inshallah ta'ala. So Allah wa sallam wa barak nabiyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam.